everything ain't what it seems. Never make comparisons of yourself to somebody else because we all. What's going on, my people? Welcome to another episode of the Progression Podcast, where every day we progressing and every L is a lesson. Super excited to get today's episode underway. Have an amazing guest today, and I'll let her introduce herself in a few. Before we get into it, you guys already know what to do. If you've been enjoying the podcast, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel so you can be updated when more material drops, and also share the videos. If you would do so, I would greatly appreciate that. Now, for today's podcast, the word we have is promulgate, which means to promote or make widely known an idea or cause. And I feel like promulgate is a good word to fit today's podcast because just the whole topic of mental health. So I think it's very important to promulgate conversations about mental health, basically. That's why I feel like promulgate is fitting for today's podcast because that's really what we'll be discussing. Now, with that said, today we make history with the Progression Podcast, also with our first guest ever, my auntie, Aunt Tina. And if you want to, you can tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Yes, Marcus, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm just amazed at all the wonderful work that you're doing and just
Thank
getting the
you.
word out there because especially with in our Black community, mental health is one of those topics that we really don't talk about. You know, we talk about like, okay, we're just going to pray it away and it really doesn't exist. I'm not telling everybody my business, but
Yeah.
we know that it's a very serious topic and we have to talk about it and we have to get the word out there. So I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been working in behavior health for the last 15 years.
Yes.
I am a therapist. I'm working in the field and I've worked in substance abuse treatment. I worked in a psychiatric hospital, worked with our veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a lot of knowledge when it comes to mental health
Yeah.
and how it affects us. And my passion is spreading the word, and especially for our people, because it's something that we really don't talk about as often. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I think that's that like when I thought about just the whole podcast, I was thinking of a way to because everybody who knows me knows that I do music, but I was thinking a lot of times with music, you can put a message in it, but sometimes the message gets drowned out by whether it's the beat or people caught up with the melody. And I felt like with the podcast, we can just get straight to the point and just have conversations because it's something that I feel like everybody is going through. But like you said, we don't may not know how to really communicate and seek help. So I thought you were the perfect person. And also to give a little story too of mine, a few years ago when I was just in a dark space, I was going through some trials and tribulations. I was able to have a conversation with you and you really helped me. So I said, you know what? This is the perfect person to have on. So I just want to thank you for, taking the time out to come and just have a conversation about mental health because you helped me. So I know that what we talk about today can help others. And so with that said, I wanted to ask you how
Oh, thank
important
you. And I truly see it as an honor.
I really wanted to ask you how important is it to seek help because I feel like it's a lot of us who aren't great at communicating. We just may not know how to seek help, like whether it's people that support you or that you can go to, but you may not want to go to them with your problems. So how important is it to communicate and seek help?
Well, one of the things I highly recommend people to seek a therapist, and there are so many therapists out there. And one of the things when we're talking about seeking help, and I'm not just talking about talking to family members, but
Mm-hmm.
really seeking professional help the same way that if you have been diagnosed with diabetes or heart condition, you're going to go to a doctor. They're going to put you on medication, but you're also going to have to change your lifestyle. And it's the same way it comes when we're talking about our mental health, because it is a disease, and we need help and we need to seek professional help. Not just talking to your best girlfriend or a family member, but actually going out seeking professionals. That That's the key.
Mhm.
And when you go out to seek help, sometimes it may not click the first time, but don't give up. Sometimes you
Right.
have to find a therapist that fits best for you.
Mhm.
And it's hard work. It's not something that you just do one time and that's it, but it takes a lot of work. And I always like to say that it's hard. I mean, it gets hard first, but then you have to continue with it, and you will start seeing the changes that you need. But it is
Right.
a process with anything. And I use the example of, if you're sick and you have been diagnosed with diabetes, they're going to put you on your medication. They're going to tell you about your eating habits that you have to
Mhm.
change. And that's the same thing when we're talking about mental health. You go and seeking a therapist. For some, our diagnosis, you do have to get on medication, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But you also, like, there is a lifestyle change that comes with it,
Mhm.
and you have to put in the work.
Right. I think that's like super important for people to hear, and also with me too, because I think a lot of times too, when it comes to mental health, what prevents us is like pride a lot of times, because we live in a society where it's like you have to put on a facade to like where everything is okay all the time, or you don't want to ever appear weak. And I feel like that's what a lot of our problems are. So we like, man, I don't want to go to no therapy because ain't nothing wrong with me, when really that's not that. It doesn't mean something is wrong with you, basically, to go seek help and just to get all of that stuff that you're holding in out, because it ultimately leads to you just being better mentally, and mentally that can just lead to you living a better life. So yeah, I agree with exactly with what you were saying. And another thing
Mhm.
that you just mentioned was about just changing your lifestyle. With that being said, how important is eating healthy? Because I think that's something we take for granted too. Like, we think that just going to therapy and that's it. Like, nah, it don't stop there. Like, so could you speak on like just eating healthy, and how is that, you know what I mean, how important that is?
Absolutely. In fact, there was a Harvard study that they did, and they have linked, your diet to it does affect your mood.
Hmm.
Do know that eating processed food, it affects, the way that you feel. If
Mm,
you put in, because your body is what you put inside, that's what you get out. So if you're putting junk in, that's what you're gonna feel. That's what you're gonna get out. That's how you're gonna feel. And
right.
so when we're talking about, my approach is, I like to look at it as a holistic approach, not just, with with your particular diagnosis, but also looking at it as a lifestyle change, and looking at every aspect of it.
Mm,
Part of it is your intake, what you put in your body, because we know if you're eating healthy, you put eating whole foods, not putting a lot of processed food.
mhm.
You're not eating a lot of red meat, really focusing on lean poultry and seafood, a lot of veggies and fruits. You feel better.
Mhm.
It's just the fact of it. And studies have shown that. And
Yeah.
so when we're talking about feeling better, you have to watch what you're eating. And so often, especially when you start feeling bad, we tend to eat ice cream, or like go to your favorite fast food place. I know for me, I love Cokes.
Mhm.
And that's not a good thing. And so you have to be mindful of what you put inside your body,
Mhm.
because it makes huge difference of how you feel, mentally and also physically too. Like, if you're, when you start eating all that stuff, you start gaining weight,
Right.
it affects your skin, you're not feeling your best. So if you're not feeling your best, you're definitely not looking your best. And it's just a cycle, that's that continues. So you have to break that by really watching
Mhm.
what you eat.
I agree. As something that really just made me think of, a lot of times we know that when we have moments where we know that we're eating bad, whether you eat something and you just like, man, I got heartburn, or man, my stomach isn't feeling the best, but you still go right back to it. Like, so basically saying that, what would you say was a moment that kind of inspired you to realize you had to eat better or eat healthier, per se?
Okay, so that's a great question, Marcus. And I feel like this is something that I'm constantly working on. So,
Hmm.
all my life, I have been very active. I'm an athlete at heart. I've always ran. But on the flip side of that, I ate whatever.
Right.
Never paid attention to what I ate. But and so once I'm older, I mean, I'm not competing anymore, so I can't just, and my workouts not like I was when I was in college. So
Mhm.
I really have to be mindful of what I eat, but also it makes me feel better. I mean, it affects the way my mood, how I feel when
Mhm.
I'm eating right. I feel better. I look better. I'm more confident, and so all those things plays a part of how you feel. So for me, it's a struggle.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I do is I try to focus. I don't try not to focus on what I can't eat. I
Mhm.
start focusing on what I should eat. So instead of saying, you know what, I'm not drinking sodas anymore, my opposite thing of that, okay, I'm going to increase my water intake. So like I just start trying to drink water with my meals, or during the week time, like really eating clean, where I'm preparing my food at home instead of
Mhm.
eating out all the time.
Right.
And like really focusing on eating more fruits and vegetables, because I love that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And so like cooking at home and incorporating more veggies in my diet makes a
Mhm.
huge difference. And I do see the change. One of the things too that I notice when I don't eat a whole lot of candy and junk foods,
Mhm.
I definitely see the change. Like it is so crazy. And
Yeah.
those are the things that I love.
Mhm.
It doesn't love my body, so I really have to be mindful of what I'm putting inside my body. And then another piece of that too, Marcus, is like looking at your family history. For our family, looking at my dad's side, like what all the different medical issues on that side of the family, and then also
Mhm.
on my mom's side of the family, looking at those health issues. And so I don't want to be put on medication, and have to take insulin shots for the rest of my life because, I can't
Same.
control what I eat and I'm not really working out. And so that kind of scares me because like for my dad, I just look at like how he was such a strong man, always worked,
Mhm.
like I never remember my dad not working, getting up, going
Right.
to work, but then just looking at the end of his life, like how he couldn't do that, like couldn't
Mhm.
even barely put the like socks on, and that's not something that I'm used to, like I was used to seeing. And so
Mhm.
like I don't want to have kidney issues and like going on dialysis and taking medication for the rest of my life.
Right.
So I know that that's an issue, and because of that's an issue, I have to make sure that I'm making the right decisions
Mhm.
that right now, because we do know it's all about preventive care. And a lot of times when we're talking about diabetes, heart disease, even though it does run in your family, but there are things that you could do to prevent it. So,
Right.
and I know we're talking about mental health, but I feel like you really can't talk about mental health without talking about medical, because it does, like I feel like it all goes hand in hand
It does.
with how it affects you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you're in a great health space, it's just like you live a better life. And a lot of times, I feel like, especially like for blacks, we have so many reasons not to eat healthy, and so many reasons not to seek a better mental health because of whether it's our surroundings, especially with fast food. Like, if most likely you living in like a black community per se, or a community where there's not like, the upper echelon food chains and stuff like that, your choices are like very bad. It's like a McDonald's every corner, fried chicken every corner, just all of the basic, what I mean, foods that's like bad for us. And it's kind of gives us an excuse not to eat healthy, and also an excuse to just be stuck in our surroundings, to think it's impossible to seek just a greater health. So I just think that with these conversations that we have and letting people know, like, yeah, we may have those times where we kind of fall short and go eat the junk. Because I know one of the things I'm bad at is like ice cream and like milk and cookies. And I try to like stray away from it. But then I got my days where it's just like, all right, I got to get back on the right path because I've been, what I mean, eating this junk too much. So I just think like, well, how you said that, like your eating habits, that I think that'll help whoever is like struggling with it too and have their moments of struggle. It help them out. So I'm glad that you spoke on that. And another thing that you mentioned was being in college. So that's another thing that I wanted to talk about with you. As someone who is a college graduate, how has it benefited you, and how important would you say college is?
That is a great question. I'm a huge advocate for education. And and I always like to say, education, it looks different from everybody, and it's so important, and especially as Black people, it's so important for us to push education and that sense of excellence, and having that expectation. And when I say, and I mean, for some people, it may look different. For some people, they may join the military. For some people, they may go to trade school. But for some people, they go to college.
Mhm.
And I always like to say too that there's no limit to what you could do. When I worked at the middle school, I had this one teacher that was saying, because it was an Abbott program, and so we used to take our kids to different colleges. And he was like, and one of the comments that he said was, "Why are they always taking these kids to colleges? They need to be taking them to more trade schools." And I was like,
Mm.
"Excuse me," because we could do whatever we put our minds to do. So if we want to be doctors, we could be doctors. If we want to own our own plumbing company, and do that, that's great as well. So I think it's so important to find out what works best for you.
Mhm.
For me, for me it was college. I felt like growing up we didn't have a whole lot, and that for me, the education, it was a way out. I wanted more in
Mhm.
life, and for me, I felt like going to school, that was something that was like my outlet. And I'm so thankful that I did that, because it opened up so many doors. Like, I've lived in 4 different states,
Mhm.
and never had an issue of finding a job,
Right.
because of that. And I think part of it, of course, God, I give him all the credit. But I was able to open up those doors and be able to even apply for that because of my education and my background,
Mhm.
and just the experience that I've gained. And then, so that's one piece of it. I feel like, and if you look at stats, I mean, studies show you like the higher of education that you have, I mean, you do you make money by that way. So that's another way, so you don't have to continue your struggle. And so that's one piece. And then the other piece is like going to college is like the friends that you gain. I
Right.
have like friends that I've never met before. Like, I just think about my husband. Like, we met in college at
Mhm.
Northwestern State University. And I think that is like, he's like one of the most amazing guys. And I would have never met him if I didn't go to college, and just
Right.
looking at his story and the amazing things that he's doing in his career. And so we're advocates of education. And I just think back, back in the day, when you think about our ancestors, how, like, when if they got caught reading a book, how like they literally died. Like, it was
Exactly.
something that they can do, because we know knowledge is so powerful. And so I think it's just so important for us to continue to have continue that aspect of it, and
Mhm.
just hold it, being prideful of, like, yes, I'm educated, and that's good. That's a good thing,
Mhm.
because I know some communities, they kind of look down on that. But we know that like, that's, I think it's a key to of being successful, is
Mhm.
being educated. And then also another piece of that too, Marcus, is this, like, you continue to have to learn. Like, I'm getting ready to start studying for another certification, and it's one
Yeah.
of those things, like, you think like, okay, I got this degree, I got this license. But when we're talking about education, it's something that you will continue doing throughout your years. It's not
Mhm.
just like a one time, that's it, but you're going to have to continue to learn.
That's super dope and just inspiring to me because I can totally agree. Like even with everyday life, if you're open to it, you'll learn something every day. So every time I talk to someone, whether they're younger or older, and we talk about college, that's always one of the first thing that comes up is how important it is, and just just seeing the progress that we made. Like, we used to not be able to go to school because we had to, what I mean, work in the family. So now to be able to do it, I think it's always important to discuss it and just have the conversation. Like, college is super important, but also the choice is yours. But just know that if you do make that choice to go, that your life can, have a great upside. So anytime I talk to someone younger than me, I'm always like, look, don't even give yourself, don't, especially like, don't make an excuse not to go, just not to go. Like, because a lot of us will be like, well, I'm not good at school, but there's also other things like you don't, you know, a lot of people get kind of discouraged when they think of like the highest degrees when maybe the degree that you're seeking, that's good for you. You don't have to say, base your life off of like the highest degrees, not making an excuse like to not want to achieve it or go after it, but just I feel like a lot of times when it comes to college, we kind of like just get discouraged and really just not all the way thinking through like, yo, I could do this. Like we made progress.
Mhm.
It wasn't a choice back in the days, but now we actually can do it. So why not? And just find any way possible to basically just go to college and get that education.
And Marcus, one of the things too that I wanted to mention too, I think is also so important by who you surround yourself around. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I was very fortunate. My cousin slash best friend Brenda, we talk about this all the time. Like
Mm-hmm.
growing up, we didn't have a counselor that sat down and told us, you should start taking this like this course to help you study for the ACT and SAT. Like we didn't have that guidance,
Mm-hmm.
but we helped each other, like I remember I got an honors English because she was in honors English and she told my mom, to get like put me in this. And like in that class, one of our assignments was we had to pick a college and we had to research it and we had to do a presentation on it,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just think it's also very important about who you surround yourself around, about people that are doing great things and that's going to support you and encourage you. And so you guys could uplift each other.
Mm-hmm. Any young people out there listening right now, please take notes to what she just said. Like surroundings are everything. So get around some good people. Like that's basically the bottom line. Get around some good people. All right. So I had wanted to like transition into some of the issues that are going on today in like society.
Mhm.
um and really that have been going on like specifically in America like for like countless amount of years now. And just some of like the more recent issues that we've been facing, like police brutality. And one of the more recent incidents is the Breonna Taylor situation. And it just was announced that like a few weeks ago the family settled, her family settled with the city of Louisville for $12 million. And then we got the other announcement that for as far as the verdict came out, that none of the police were going to be charged. So I kind of just wanted to get your thoughts on that whole situation.
Yeah, I think that whole situation is it's very unfortunate. It's
Mm-hmm.
a sad situation. My heart goes out to her family because I think so often, whenever we have these situations, always say their name or, and everybody start trending and showing pictures. But I think sometimes we lose sight that we're talking about somebody's life. Like this person no longer here. And just think about, like her job, and during the time like she was putting her life on the line. Like this was during COVID, like where where she had to go out and take these people to the hospital. She's one of those people that we consider an essential worker.
Mm-hmm.
So you could tell that her heart, like this young lady had a huge heart. I don't know her personally, but my heart just goes out to that family. And then also her boyfriend, like these people were in their bed sleep. Wasn't expecting this to happen. And the people that we lean on as to protect and serve us, that took an oath to do
Mm-hmm.
this. And and just looking at the lies happened afterwards and how everything got covered up. So I think it's a very unfortunate situation. The ruling and the verdict and all that wasn't surprising, which is sad. Like I wasn't expecting, know, to those cops, because we could look at what history showed us. Nothing really happens. And I think, as Black people, it could, you could get, you could feel hopeless and
Hmm.
but I think one of the things that helps me through it all is realizing like this world isn't ours, and just
Right.
realizing who's ultimately in control. And that helps ground me. Like I don't really follow the news anymore. And I was one of those people that, especially like when during election time, like I'm watching it. And
Hmm.
but now it's just like I could care less about that because it's just the same old. But I
Right.
do know who's in control of it all. And
Hmm.
like that's who I put my faith and trust in, because I know that God is faithful.
Hmm.
He's always right on time. He could fight battles that we can't even fight, and I
Right.
feel like this battle right here is beyond us, like
Yeah.
it's beyond just marching, or let me just tweet about it, or let me put a post about it, like
Right.
we're living in a time where we truly have to fall on our face and
Yeah.
pray and truly give it over to God, because I just feel like, like they're like, what do you do?
Hmm.
And like when I feel like that, I know what to do and I know who's in control of it all.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I think with the verdict, just seeing these incidents play out over and over and over, you kind of get numb to it, which is sad. And like you say, the verdict wasn't surprising at all. But it's like every time we think we kind of, it's like when you see like the protests and the things like that going on, you kind of start to think like, okay, well maybe we're making a little progress. Maybe they'll hear us this time. Maybe are we a little louder than we were last time? And it's like you get a little hopeful, and then the verdict comes out and it's like not guilty again. And it's just like, oh man, like you come back to that realization, like, yo, we're just, they'll never give us the respect that we deserve just being as humans. And I think that's what this verdict showed me in particular, was that just like I've always known that in America specifically, the value of a black life, or just the value of a colored life, is just like it ceased to exist. Like the other side always looks at it like zero, like you matter none to us. And it's just like sometime again, like you'll think that you're making a little progress and that maybe this time we'll get justice. So when it happens again, it's just like, okay, at this point, if I keep believing that, then I'm just like wasting my time. But I just think that it's just sickening just to keep, to, what I mean, just keep going through this over and over. But like you said, God is in control, and the things that people are getting away with on earth, that's what I have to remind myself of sometimes. Like, you know what, this is just happening right now on earth, but God has the last say. So, you know what I mean? He's seeing it all. Like, you can treat us this way all you want, but when that day comes, I mean, like, you gonna have to answer. Like, y'all gonna have to answer. Like, we all are. But when it comes to matters like these, I just feel like it's just like you ultimately just wanted to be, you want to be treated just human. Like, that's all we're asking for. And yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this because it's been a big topic, of course, and it's just a unfortunate situation. So yeah, with that being said, I also wanted to know what are some of the challenges you would say of being a black woman in America?
Well, that is a great question. And, I think that being a Black woman in America is very challenging. And I think, that's one of the things that I enjoy doing, being a mentor
Hmm.
to upcoming professionals in my field, because, I think that when we're in school, when we do our internship, there are some things that they don't tell us about the
Hmm.
struggles, and what that's like. And, I, just looking at the stories that I had to endure throughout my career as a professional, but also as a leader. So
Hmm.
a lot of times we are put in spaces where we're the only one in those spaces, and we're in leadership roles. And sometimes people have a hard time dealing with that. And during those times, I have learned so much in that challenge. And and I think one of the things, it just really focused on like my strength and who, like knowing who I am and
Hmm.
who I belong to. And I can't say this enough. Is like my just relying on my relationship with God, like has truly carried me through so many situations.
Hmm.
When you're in put in situations, and I think it kind of goes back to, we talk about feeling like you're devalued in America, and words are very powerful. And so I say you have to be careful about what you speak out there. Like, I don't feel like I'm devalued in
Hmm.
America, because I know who I am, and I know who I belong to. And I know, like looking at the notion that sometimes society try to put on us, it's so different from who God told us who we
Hmm.
are. And so that really helps me through a lot, and that's how I navigate the situations. Is my faith is so huge,
Hmm.
gives me such a huge strength. But then also, like, drawing on my support, like my husband, like being able to have conversations with him, and talking to him about different challenges, and so that's very beneficial. And then also, like, surrounding yourself around other professionals, Black women. When I was in Waco, we started this, there's a association called the National Association of Black Social Workers, so we started a chapter in Waco, just so we could
Hmm.
have some more support in our field. Because a lot of times, you do feel so isolated, and you're the only one that's going through this, and you just need somebody to talk to, bounce ideas from. And so I think that that's so helpful, having mentors and mentees, and, some colleagues that you could talk to process some things with.
Hmm.
And, so I would say that those are the things that help me, like my faith, having the support from my spouse, from my colleagues, my friends, family members. Like, that really helps a lot.
Yeah. Like as far as me, like just being a black man in America, if we had to like really just name the challenges, like with you being a black woman and me being a black man, I think that we'll be on here all night. But one of the things for me that helps me kind of like keep pushing is just to realize, like you said, one of the things you said with knowing who you are, and ultimately that your value is really up to us as like black people. It doesn't We don't need validation from another race to determine how valuable we are. And that's something that I've just like started to really just really truly understand, because it's easy to slip into the stereotype that other races are, me, at a higher level than you. And when you look at the surroundings you grow up in, or you look at just your people only being successful in limited fields, it kind of gives you a false perception that, oh, maybe black people are only valuable to a certain, a certain level, rather than you really just I just feel like you really just aren't knowledgeable enough to understand, if you're not having these conversations, or you're not really doing your research. And it's easy to fall into that kind of mindset, but when you really start to learn, you really can see and understand that your, like you said, your value lies within self. And just really realizing how strong, like just being black, like being black is really enough if we really just put our mind to it, because we it's been shown that we've overcome so much, and we keep doing
Yeah.
it every time. Like we go through something and we overcome it every time. So I just think like that I really was able to relate to that when you said like just knowing who we are. Okay, so one of the other things that I wanted to ask was, how do you think we can progress as people, like as black people specifically?
That's a great question. One of the things, like, so here's the thing. I feel like number one will be like our faith. We're living in this day and age where everything is okay. Like, there's no sense of morals or values. I think, just kind of starting back from the foundation, like, really relying on God, like truly putting him number one in our lives. And, instead of, I know, like, in God we trust, America always have to like that slogan, but are we really living up to that? Like, so I think that that's the first thing. The second thing is like having high expectations for ourselves. like, and really seeing our worth. You really looking at having those high expectations, getting educated, and education is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Finding out what works best for you. And excelling in it. Having that sense of excellence in everything that we do. Whatever you do, you're going to do it your best. Though you're going to do it the first time, you're going to have a positive attitude with doing it and not relying on anybody else. Like, I think everybody else is irrelevant, but if we make, as individuals, if we are putting our best foot forward,
Mm-hmm.
we know who we are because we know who we come from. But also, we're striving for excellence in everything that we do. We're getting our education, and we're giving back to our families, giving back to like other people, because if you could go out and help everybody else, but you're not helping your family, I think feel like that's irrelevant. So I
Right.
think, um, your faith in God, education, having that sense of excellence, and then also giving back. Like, we have to help others. And like, when you know something, let somebody else know, so they don't have to go through the same things that you have been dealing with. So I think that those are some of the things that really will help us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't even think about like, oh, look how they're treating Black people in America, but no, like, okay, how can I make myself better? What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do for my community? I'm not letting anybody else tell me what they're going to do for me. Like, no, what can I do? And and I would have to say this: Black people, we do that. I know, like, we live in a society where people are always talking about like Black people are always trying to get handouts, and but I've come across a lot of like the Black people that I know, hard workers.
Right.
They're going to work hard. They're going to give it their best. Very smart, intelligent people.
Mm-hmm.
So we're excellent, and we just have to continue that and expect that from the generations that's coming behind us, and having that sense of excellence, that high those high expectations.
Right. So one of the things you said about getting back to just basically like holding ourselves accountable almost like and having standards like there's a lot that goes on today, and not only in just the Black community but in the world. Like, people are away, like, again, to what you said, people are getting away from morals and just the basics of just being a stand-up person, I feel, for lack of a better term. Like, um I do believe that one of the biggest ways that we can improve is just like, if you see another person, if you see like another Black person doing something that we all know is out of line, rather than turning the eye to it, or like, man, I don't want, that's not my business. We can kind of like approach each other, get back to just like treating it like a village, almost like keeping each other in check, and also like just holding each other accountable. Because I feel like a lot of times today we starting to think that just being ignorant or just doing crazy stuff is just like acceptable, and we deem it as cool, when really it's just like we're playing ourselves out of our position. If we were to hold each other accountable and just have conversations, like, I'm not bashing you, I'm not looking down up on you, I'm just telling you, like, and I also want you to do the same if I step out of line. If we can get to that place of mind, like, I feel like we can start to make a lot of more, like, just a lot of more changes. Because right now we're all over the place. Even like asking a question like, how do you think we can progress as Black people? Like, I think another thing we have to do is have some organization. Like, let's get a list of some things, some small things out of the way first. That way, when we do that, we could just start knocking them down, like, one by one, rather than everybody is all over the place. Well, I think we should have this. I think we should be doing this. And it's just like we still, because I think that just brings the division. Because then if you got everybody all over the place, it's just like, I'm going to do what's best for me and my family. You do what's best for you and your family. And they're like, we're not getting nowhere. So I just feel like with what you said, and just as far as what I believe, like, as far as like just the whole standard, holding each other accountable, like, I feel like those are definitely like two like key major ways that we can, you know what I mean, just progress. Another thing that I wanted to talk about with you and just see how you feel about it. It's something that I've been thinking about recently. And that is, I believe that if you were like a Black person, you should be at least afforded a trip to Africa. Whether it's a round trip like for a weekend, or just like, and it should be on America. Like, America should provide that. Like, that's the least you could do. Like, you guys brung us over here. Like, can you at least let us get back to our roots? And that's just my thinking. So, of course, I want to know your opinion on it. But I do think that it's important for us to go back to Africa and see how far we are from our roots. Like, because like that is our land. That is where we are. That's where we're from. That's our like that's our land basically. So like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that is a cool idea. But there are some things that we could do now. Like my sister Quita, she ended up did I think she did I think it was the ancestor.com, but she did that, and like we were able to see where we come from, and
Hmm.
it's like, oh, so that's why I like water so much. So I think that like those are some of the things that we could do right now, really knowing where you come from, where tribe you from, and like so there's different tests that you could do to figure that
Hmm.
out. And phone with my really good friend. She's from Nigeria, and we're just talking about all different kind of stuff. And one of the things that she stated was, you really truly have to know where you come from, and I think that that's so important because it affects how you act, and how you like what you accept and what you don't accept in life. And so I think that, yeah, I think that'll be cool
Hmm.
first. But definitely that's on my bucket list to go to Africa, whether they pay for it or not. But I am
Yeah.
gonna go. But also, like, some of the things that we could do now is like you could take those tests to figure out exactly what tribe you come from and what that looks like. And also remember, like, even though slavery is in our history, like, we can't erase that. That's part of what happened to America, but it doesn't define us.
Hmm.
Like, it doesn't define us, and it doesn't dictate where we're going.
Hmm.
And so I think that that's also important to know.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I've been reading this book called Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome, and that's one of the things that I read about. She was discussing, the lady that wrote the book. Let me not say lady. Let me say her name. Dr. Joy DeGry. And she's talking about like her trip to Africa and just the whole experience, like just a family vibe. And I was like, that really sparked the idea. Like, I think it'd be dope if every black person could just go. Like, of course we could do the small steps like that you're talking about, like ancestry.com, seeing where you're from, holding conversations like, guys, do you know anything about how it used to be in Africa? Or like, let's get that back to that kind of feel or way of life. I think is important, but I just think like, if you're actually there, just that experience and just getting to see it firsthand, like, these are actually my people. It's just like we're so detached because being in
Yes.
America, and America operates very differently from Africa. So it's just inspiring to really just, once you really just, because like I say, with me, these are things that I had to learn, and once I started learning, I was like, yo, I've been blind for so long. But that's one of the dope things about when you start to learn and actually seek knowledge about who you are as a black person and how strong your race is. Like, you start to realize how far you can go and how far we've came, and just other ways that you can help others in your same race, like, become better people too. So I just think, like, with all of these conversations, it's just like for a greater cause, and just to let us know, like, because you also taught me some things with, like, if we know who we are, like, we don't have to rely on validation from another race. And I think that was very important. So um yeah, that's basically what I wanted to
I
ask.
agree with that, Marcus.
Yeah, I really just wanted to ask because
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if I don't know if with me saying like we should all have a trip over there. I don't know if that's kind of like overboard. But I said, you know what, I'm gonna get some other
No,
opinions
but
on
that would be dope, right?
it. Yeah, it would. It would. Like, I'll probably be one of the first ones to sign up. So
We got to put that on our list though.
yes, definitely. So one of the we're almost done. One of the last things that I wanted to ask you about, which relates back to like mental health, is just some of the topics we've been talking about, like as far as like slavery and just things that black people have gone through. Do you believe, in your opinion, that slavery and just being passed down, just the trauma that our people went through plays a large part in our mental health today?
Absolutely. Like we do know like trauma, it affects, it goes into your DNA. Like
Mm-hmm.
studies, research have shown and proven that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
And we also know vicarious trauma is real too. You know, if you're always around that, like it start affecting you, and especially when you start like, and one of the things I want to talk about, you know, when we're talking about mental health is suicide, because that's another one of another passion that I have. And looking at this back in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, suicide was, they said, the 10th leading cause of death.
Mm-hmm.
But just within those 3 years when I was there, the last year, the newest study came out, and it between ages 10 and just 10 to it's the same leading cause of, like ages 10 years old to 35 is the cause of death. From 35 to 54 is the let me see, let's see, it's the fourth leading cause of death. And from ages 55 through 64 is the eighth leading cause of death. So we do know
Mm-hmm.
suicide is real, is happening. And one of the things that we don't talk about, especially because we're, you know, when we're start talking about the Black population, especially young men, young Black men, suicide rate, like that particular population, is the high among anybody.
Wow.
um, but we don't talk, like you don't really hear that, you know, because we say, oh, Black folks, they don't kill themselves, you know, that's not
Mm-hmm.
something that we do. That's a lie. I mean, it's happening. And I think a lot of it has, you know, just the toll going on. We mental health. Oh, and also it may look different up in school. You know, immediately they end up taking them to detention. They're getting expelled from school. They're asking those questions. Are you okay? What's going
Mm-hmm.
on? We know that you start acting differently. We know that that's not usually your behavior, but you know they don't get that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in a lot of it, you know, we could talk about like the systemic racism that's there. But I think as a community, you know, as Black people, that's something that we can start talking about. We can start looking at, you know, well, I noticed this person is acting a little different here. What's going on with them? Asking
Right.
those questions. Are you thinking about hurt? Are you thinking about killing yourself? And it's okay to ask that question, you know. And if they do say that they are, you know, showing them places where they can go to get help, you know, it's very important, because we do know that it's real, it's happening. And, you know, so we want to make sure that we're getting them the help that they need.
I totally agree, and I just think that's why people like you yourself who does what who are doing the things that you're doing is like very important because you never know what people are going through. You know, someone can really be
Yes,
smiling and really dying inside, and you wouldn't have
absolutely.
any idea about it because again, like one of the things we said earlier, they may not know how to communicate or seek help, or they might be afraid of judgment or man, if people find out that I'm going to therapy, what would they say? So it's just like all kind of things. And some people just want to check out and just be like, I just want to end it all. You know what I mean? And that's why I think that is very important for us to have people in the world like you, like yourself, who are doing what you're doing, making it, you know what I mean? Ultimately like saving lives and changing lives. And that way, those people who on the verge of suicide and they were able to seek help and end up getting it, like they can inspire someone else and be the change for someone else to understand that it's okay and we all struggle because that's one of the things that I struggled with early on was feeling like something was wrong with me because I
Mm-hmm.
would go through certain things like in the mental aspect of life and just be like why can I control my mind and just want to check out like if I could just
Mm-hmm.
cut all of this out right now I would do it but is it's
Mm-hmm.
really like when you start to seek help and just let your pride down and just like tell people like I'm suffering like right now like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I'm gonna make it to tomorrow because I just feel horrible like and I feel like I'm the only one going through it. That's another big thing too. I feel like a lot of us out here are
Yep.
feeling like we're the only ones like man nobody
Yes.
else is going through this. So Like
Yep.
for someone who for someone who's watching right now, right, and they feel like, okay, I love this conversation that they're having, and I totally agree, but I just still don't have the strength to seek help right now. Like, is there anything that you could really just tell them, like, directly?
Yes. So one of the things that I would recommend to do, they have the 1-800 suicide. You could call that number, and and you could just have somebody to talk to. Like, you don't necessarily have to like just be ready to seek treatment anywhere, but sometimes it helps just having
Hmm.
somebody to talk to. And another thing too that I would encourage, and I know I follow your podcast that you have, and I know I can't remember which one it was, but you kind of talked about social media. And like, we live in a day and age where looking on social media, everybody, it looks like everybody have everything together. People talk to show the highlights of their life. I think
Hmm.
it's so important to pick up the phone and call a person, send them a text message, not just liking their picture or sending them a message on Facebook. But I think it's so important for us to pick up the phone and call each other, because people may present like they're
Hmm.
okay, on social media, but it's something totally different in real world. Like, I feel like we live in two separate worlds. Like, you have social media world and then you have reality. And sometimes a lot of people's
Right.
reality don't really look good. So I think it's so
Hmm.
important, if you have a friend that you hadn't really talked to in like God knows how long, pick up the phone, call them, send them a text message, just want to know how
Hmm.
you're doing. And like
Yes.
really listening to them, like that makes a huge difference. Because you'll be
Hmm.
surprised, just those words, how are you doing? It could be life changing for somebody. So
Right.
I think that's very important for if you're someone that needs help, you can always call that 1-800 crisis line number. But also, if you're on the other side of it, send text messages to some of those friends that you hadn't talked to, or some of those family members that you hadn't talked to, just to say, hey, I'm
Hmm.
thinking about you. How are you doing? It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And I totally agree. And that was helpful not only for whoever needs it, but also for myself. Because even though there's times where I feel amazing and I feel like I'm in a great mental state, I also realize that it's a never ending process. So even when you get to, like, to anyone who's listening, even when you get to a good mental state, also realize that you have to keep like seeking like a greater mental state, because you may be hit with a hurdle tomorrow and you just don't want to freak out. And because it's just like that's just a part of life. That's what I'm realizing, that like we'll never have it all figured out, but the goal is to be prepared mentally, spiritually. And if you're constantly seeking a greater mental health, I feel like you set yourself up with like just the best chance to just live a great life. Like, and it doesn't, and like to the point you said about social media, that was like the last topic I wanted to talk about too. um as far as like social media and just the whole digital world that we live in today, a lot of us again are basing our lives on this, and we're thinking that we have to live up to a certain standard, or we have to be rich, or like we have to have instant success. And that's one of the things that was one of my biggest struggles too early on, before like I started getting into therapy and just having conversations about mental health, was thinking that if I just hold one conversation about it, that I would instantly feel better. And I think that plays a part of me at moments looking at social media like, man, well, other people are, they may be down for a minute and they right back to it. So now I feel like I just gotta, what I mean, get over it. And I just feel like, again, like you said, social media plays a part of that. So what's your take on, do you think that it should be like a balance when it comes to social media? Do you feel like what's your take on just social media, the use of it?
So I'm probably like one of those people that's probably like, I actually went like 2 years where I wasn't on anything. And, it just, because I feel like it's very important to have boundaries. Realizing that, and I kind of define it as you have social media and you have the real world, the reality. And so for me, I put boundaries up, like I'm not like on there all the time. Sometimes I don't, I'm like, whatever, I delete my page,
Mm-hmm.
and and some, if I'm bored and I don't have anything to do, I may pick it up. But I think it's so important to have boundaries when it comes to social media, and also finding out what works best for you. So for some people, like that's their way of life, and
Mm-hmm.
it's the best thing, and they're okay with that. That's great, but if you're a person that start finding yourself comparing yourself to others, finding yourself always on there, not getting work done, that's not healthy,
At all.
and so I feel like you have to have a balance. With anything, there's goods and there are bads, about it. Like the pros is you get a chance to connect with other people, people that you probably don't really get a chance to talk to that often. But I also feel like if these people are people that I consider close to me, that are my friends, I'm going to talk to them whether I'm on
Right.
social media or not.
Right.
Like they're going to send me messages. I'm going to send them messages, whether I'm on social media or not. I feel like that's real friends, not
Yeah.
social media friends. And so I think that that's my stance on it. I think for me, I have to have boundaries. But I do understand everybody is different, and I'm here to pass judge no one. I feel like you have to go with what works best for you. I think you platform to have, but I also feel like you need to have those boundaries with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm like I totally agree. I'm not like a heavy social media person, and that's kind of been like with me being in the pursuit to be an artist. It's one of like the biggest tools, and it's something that you have to constantly be on. And I think that's kind of something that I'm at war with a lot. It's like I hate social media, but I gotta use it to promote and connect. So it's just like, okay, how do I find that balance? And one of the things that I try to do is I try to get on there and just promote what I have to promote, or connect with a few people, and I try to like get out right away. Because I find a lot of times if I just get on there just out of boredom, I'll be on there for one thing only, and then I look up like an hour or so later and I'm still on there, and I'm just like, man, I can't be doing this. Like I done wasted an hour of my life just looking at pictures and looking at all kind of nonsense all across the world. And yeah, just basically what you said, just boundaries and just a finding a balance. So I feel like a lot of times we kind of get carried away with it, not passing judgment like you say, but a lot of times we just don't realize that we're letting it control us when really we're supposed to just control it and just have that balance. So I just wanted to bring that up and get your thoughts on just the whole social media and digital world. But I definitely agree with what your opinion and your stance on social media. And that concludes really all of our topics for today on the Progression Podcast. I want to thank you again for joining the podcast, making history, being the first guest on the Progression Podcast. Uh,
Oh wow, this is fun.
yeah, I was super nervous because I'm like I don't know why I was super nervous. I guess it was just because like I'd never like having the whole mental health. I've like again I've talked about it in like a few episodes here and there, but I was like, man, this episode I wanted to be for a majority of the episode to talk about mental health, and I was kind of nervous because I'm just like, not only am I do I want to talk about it, but I also want to learn too. So I was just like, I'm kind of nervous to do it because I know I gotta still be in the mode to where I'm engaging and making sure I'm on point, but I'm trying to learn. So I'm just like, oh man, I'm super nervous, but it turned out to be great, and I thank you for just teaching not only everyone listening, but giving me some game on mental health and how important it is to seek help. So, yeah, thank you. Like, just thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. So yeah, that wraps up today's episode. Again, we want to thank you for tuning in to the Progression Podcast. You guys know what to do. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share these videos. Make sure you share this one specifically because mental health is a big deal and we all need to promulgate it. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We love you. Thanks for the support.